Hey everybody, welcome back. If you saw my video about modeling the IUL in Boldin, what I mentioned in there is that I was going to actually have Boldin take a look at that plan and give you an update on exactly whether or not doing the one-on-one session with them would be worthwhile or even cost effective, for lack of a better word. So spoiler alert, the answer is yes. I highly recommend doing it, and the reasons are going to be as follows. So part of the reason I did it was because I always had my own suspicions about how the software is generating these numbers. The second thing is, you don't want a situation where you have a false sense of security. And that's kind of how I felt a little bit with my plan, because if you look at everything, Boldin typically uses the way they model is almost like a static return model. So that's why the Monte Carlo simulator is so useful, is because you're going to vary paths across market returns. And that's exactly how the market works. If you took the stock market index, the S&P 500 index, and look back all the way to, say, some event that or incorporates some series of events, like from 1999, there's a number of different economic events that really shocked the market. And let's say you went back to 2000, that's 25 years, right? That's a typical retirement arc. So what I like about the Monte Carlo simulator, and something that I think wasn't a tool that could be easily incorporated in software, but now, because of the way that systems are designed and just what's available to incorporate into other software packages, this now becomes a reality. So with Boldin, though, even if you export the data out, somebody who's very familiar with spreadsheet modeling, so example, you have categories on the left side, you have years on the top, and you do, essentially columns are your P&L or your cash flow. That becomes a very hard thing to put your head around when you use Boldin, because even the extract is kind of strange. It just gives you the output of certain categories. And diving into or reverse engineering those numbers is really a science. So with this meeting I had yesterday with a gentleman named Michael Kaufman, who is fantastic and a great listener, but also very, very fluent with the software package, I thought was a great use of the money that I spent for it. What he did was he actually dissected components of my plan and told me why there was certain kind of philosophies around assumptions in the plan. For example, if you have a 529 plan, I incorporated that I consider that like an asset. And so I incorporated that in my plan because my plan was, when my son is planning to go to college, I would tap into the 529, or I would defer the payment of college tuition till after he graduated and take out a loan and service the loan with the 529. But what he told me was, this tool is essentially a retirement forecaster for your life. The 529 is for your son's life. And that although it is an asset to an extent, you're not using it for your retirement planning. So my immediate retort to him was like, well, what happens if I'm underfunded for his college education, for example, and I need to draw down monies from my IRA to pay for whatever, the tuition or the loan? And what he said to me was kind of interesting. What he said was, well, that's going to be a life event that you can incorporate later on as a disbursement, but you don't want to incorporate that now as an asset within your retirement planner, because it's going to affect the Monte Carlo simulator. That's basically, it's sort of like having noise in the model that's not really relevant to your retirement journey. And I kind of had to think through that a little bit. It does make a little bit of sense, because what I'm sensing is that if you have to draw down monies from your IRA to pay for something like that, like a college education, it really is just an expense that you would incorporate in the years that you would incur it. And so it's not really something you have to model as part of retirement, because chances are your 529 is growing off to the side, and your money in your IRA is growing, in your portfolio. And it's up to you to choose how you want to pay for that, because you either pay for it through your IRA, or in some cases, many parents, their children take out the loans and they pay for it. I don't particularly like to saddle my son with debt, but it's the concept of how you would want to look at modeling it. And there was other bunch of neat features I thought were, he showed me that I would not know unless I really dug into the software. For example, certain assets, if you have for like your car or whatever, boats, etc., there's an asset section in there. It doesn't factor into anything in the Monte Carlo simulator. And that's the driving point about the whole software solution. The Monte Carlo simulator is what's driving your chances of success. That is really the area that I think if you want any security, whether or not your plan is working, that is essentially where you need to go. So what he told me was, put your assets, like your car, in that section because it's depreciating. But things like cryptocurrency, or maybe you have, I don't know, some other form of asset that generates income, like vending machines, for example. I was thinking about that today. I saw an ad. But you put that in your section where it's like your IRA. And there's an option in there to classify the asset class as like a pre-tax, post-tax, like a Roth, or other income. And that then will allow the Monte Carlo simulator to incorporate that into its calculations to be able to give you a chance of success. I didn't know that. I didn't know that the other asset sections doesn't do anything. That's really for more like a legacy goal. And there was a number of other features in there that I thought were really helpful. For example, this is something I have not a lot of experience around, and something that I think all retirees will not have a lot of experience around. That is long-term care and Medicaid. Medicaid is very complicated, and basically there's areas in there, and I don't want to even venture down this path because I'll just muck it up. But there's some areas in there that this software solution incorporates that are very tax sensitive, and you have to be cognizant of that. I plan to get a little bit more information about that. Maybe I'll do another video later to talk through it. But what he told me was, in my plan, he thought that my Medicaid and Medicare was a little underfunded. Now, that was the part that I took away from that discussion. See, for me, I plan on self-insuring. I don't want to buy insurance, nor do I want to have my children put me into a nursing or hospice care, which leads me to another discussion I'll talk to you in a second. But he said that, obviously take a look at that, look and see how that gets funded. What he told me was that he recorded the Zoom video. Let me look at what he said, and I'll come back and do another video on that, exactly Medicaid and Medicare. For those of you who are watching, it's absolutely important for you to consider what Medicaid and Medicare does to your plan. Now, here's a thing that I thought was fairly interesting. So I modeled my longevity age at 87, and he asked me, Vincent, why did you do that? I just want to understand philosophically. And we had a really nice discussion around it. He actually gave me more than an hour, which I thought was awesome. And I think just because he's a great guy, by the way. Michael Kaufman is his name, and also just a really good listener. And so what I said to him was, well, Michael, this is a philosophical decision. I don't want to live past 87. You know why? Because right now, as I'm doing this video, I'm almost 56 in a few months. And I'm grappling with the decision to really fully retire. At the time of this recording, I am right now here in beautiful Bangkok. You probably can't see it. It's right now around 7 in the morning. But let me give you a view. This is just outside my condo complex, but you can see the confluence of new and old style buildings in Thailand. And part of my retirement journey incorporates being in Thailand. And so I said to him, look, I'm planning to just die with zero or give it all to my wife. I don't want to saddle my children with a massive tax bill by giving them all of my money later, although I don't mind giving it to them. I'd rather they have it. However, having said that, what I told them was, quite frankly, I don't want long-term care insurance because I don't mind I know this is going to be very controversial, but I don't mind euthanizing myself. I don't mind. In fact, I had that discussion with my financial planner. I actually plan to go to Canada, where I think euthanization is legal. Now, don't flame me on this. You decide how you want to manage your life, etc. However, I think you should manage the fullest of your life now when you're young. Like in my case, I'm 55, because I know, having interviewed my father, he told me, really, up until 70, 75, everything starts to slow down. So you can just take any kind of YouTube video out there from other people who are saying the same, that they are trying to live the best of their lives now. So that was the reason for my decision to have an 87 longevity life. And what he told me, though, from a financial modeling perspective, you should put it out as far as possible, because the reason is chances are you are going to live longer, and the second thing is the software will give you a better run. It will have a longer runway to calculate really how much money you truly will have. So that was a really interesting discussion I had. I really enjoyed talking to him about it. The other thing also is about the Roth conversions. So I love that part of the tool. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not you should do Roth conversions. In fact, I'm going to do another video about that. There's reasons why you should and shouldn't do Roth conversions. But what he told me was, in your baseline, don't do any Roth conversions with the Roth Explorer. Basically put everything in there without any Roth conversions, because that baseline should be pristine. That gives you a good sense of all of your starting points, like the jump-off point. And then, as you should do scenarios that incorporate different lifestyle event issues. So in your scenario manager, you know, you could have an event like you have a wedding, or you have to pay your college, or you have, like, maybe you have some health expense. And then have each different Roth explorations in those different scenarios. That's essentially how the scenario manager should be utilized. It should be varying kinds of events in your life that incorporate that event. And then that becomes like almost the category for the Monte Carlo simulator to start working its path. Those, I think, were just tremendously helpful pieces of advice that I got from him. The other thing also is about how I classified certain asset classes. Like this is just more of a typo kind of idea. I have a SEP, and it was put in as a 401k. There's something in the solution that classifies that differently for taxes. Now, the other thing that I think he's going to get back to me that I really stumped him on is the concept of Rule of 55 or Rule 72T. There is some information in there, but it's not very clear how the solution does it. So that's how I'm going to leave it here. Stay tuned for that. I'm going to put out a video on exactly that. But do you want my opinion on it? I suggest buying it. In fact, I don't know. I've tried Income Labs, and you know, there's a lot of free tools out there. I like Boldin. These guys really gave a lot of thought to it. I think they're continually refining the solution. And for a do-it-yourselfer, I don't think you can find anything better than this. If you want some certainty, not certainty, but if you want to minimize the lack of transparency into your end years, this tool gives you a good sense of it. Now, this goes into my second discussion. He asked me, why did I start a YouTube channel? And I told him, I said, look, your tool was really what set it off for me. I needed some visibility to how I could live my life. And then once I started to get a sense of what I could be doing, like when I could potentially retire, that led me to this whole concept of, where do I get proper health care? Where do I want to live, and what do I love to do? You know, what kinds of things do I love to do? And that thought process has to be thought out by you. It's very personal. For me, as I just showed you, I think it's going to be here in Southeast Asia. Part of the reason I'm here for the next 90 days as I'm doing this video is because I really want to live here. I found out about healthcare here, and I plan to do another video about, just a short one, about just how accessible healthcare is here. If you look in the Boldin solution, part of the Monte Carlo simulator, a lot of effort that they're giving into it is around Medicare and Medicaid, as well as Social Security, because those are the high ticket items that are going to really hinder many retirees, because you know what? The government knows you're going to retire. You're going to pass away at some point, and all of that money has to be taxed away in some manner. It has to be thrown back into the system. So I don't know, there's a little bit of a conspiracy in my mind about that. But having said that, you know, to me, my personal arbitrage or my retirement hack is to live in a country that is, one, highly advanced technologically, two, great place to live with great weather, and three, has tremendously great healthcare. And that to me is Southeast Asia. So with that, I'm going to leave it here. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for a couple other videos that I'll put out about Boldin. But this is just an update on exactly whether or not you should do the Boldin review, and I highly recommend it. Thanks for watching.